Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring something that's both fascinating and a little bit unnerving.
Okay.
It's the potential long-term impacts of 2D displays and social media on the human brain. So you want to know how all that screen time might be rewiring us?
Yeah.
And not just for kids, right? We're diving into potential effects across all age groups.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about this deep dive is we're basing this entire thing on information generated by an AI chatbot.
Oh, wow.
We had a text-based conversation with it about this very topic.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it was a very insightful conversation. What struck me is that we're not just talking about the amount of screen time here, but the quality of information consumption. Like, how could this constant stream of prepackaged, easily digestible data be impacting our cognitive abilities, our emotions, and even our social skills?
Okay, I'm a little freaked out, but let's get into it. So the AI pointed to 5 key areas where we might be seeing long-term effects.
Okay.
The first one is reduced critical thinking and cognitive flexibility.
Right.
I know those are kind of buzzwords, but what do they really mean?
Well, cognitive flexibility is our brain's ability to switch gears, adapt to new situations, and come up with creative solutions. It's like having a mental Swiss Army knife.
I like
that can tackle any problem.
Yeah.
But if we're constantly being spoon-fed information, we might be losing the ability to think for ourselves. And the AI had some really compelling examples to illustrate this.
Yeah, those examples were kind of wild.
Yeah.
Like that scenario where someone is in a public safety crisis.
Right.
And freezes because they're so used to relying on their phone for instructions.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you wonder, what happens when we're faced with a situation that's not in the App Store?
Exactly. The AI actually referenced a study where researchers found that excessive reliance on GPS navigation was linked to a decrease in activity in the hippocampus, which is the brain region crucial for spatial memory and navigation. So it suggests that by outsourcing our navigation to technology, we might be weakening our own internal compass.
Wow. So basically Google Maps could be making us worse at finding our way around?
Potentially.
That's ironic and terrifying.
It is pretty ironic.
And it wasn't just about getting lost. The AI also brought up some pretty intense workplace scenarios.
Yeah, like in fields like aviation or surgery.
Oh gosh.
Where split-second decisions and critical thinking under pressure are essential.
Okay.
Like imagine a pilot who is so used to autopilot that they struggle to take manual control in an emergency.
Right.
Or a surgeon who's so reliant on digital imaging that they miss a subtle but critical detail during a procedure.
That makes you think twice about all those "I'm a surgeon, ask me anything" threads on Reddit.
Right.
But on a more relatable level, how does this lack of critical thinking play out in our everyday lives?
Well, think about how we consume news and information.
Okay.
Are we actively evaluating different perspectives? Or are we just passively accepting whatever pops up on our feeds?
Right.
Are we challenging assumptions?
Yeah.
Or are we letting algorithms dictate our opinions?
Right.
The AI argued that this uncritical acceptance of information can make us more susceptible to manipulation, bias, and even misinformation.
So it's not just about losing our sense of direction.
Right.
It's about losing our ability to think for ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's a pretty scary thought.
It is a scary thought.
I'm starting to feel like I need to go off the grid and live in a yurt.
Yeah.
But before I renounce all technology, let's move on to the next area.
Okay.
The AI highlighted, which is impaired memory formation and retention. Is this like senior moment stuff? Or is there something more to it?
It's actually much deeper than that. The AI explained that our brains are constantly bombarded with information. And this overload can make it difficult to prioritize and store information effectively.
Okay.
Imagine your brain as like a computer with limited RAM.
Okay.
If you have too many programs running at once, the system slows down and starts to crash.
Yeah.
The AI actually pointed to research that showed students who took notes on laptops
Really?
remembered less information than those who took notes by hand.
Interesting.
This is because handwriting forces you to process information more deeply, which strengthens memory encoding.
So you're telling me that my inability to remember where I put my keys is not just a sign of getting older.
Yeah.
It could be because my brain is fried from too much screen time.
It's possible.
I'm feeling personally attacked right now.
Yeah.
But okay, so note-taking aside, what are some other real-life examples of this memory impairment?
Well, the AI brought up a fascinating study where participants were shown a series of images, and then half of them were allowed to take photos of the images while the other half were not. Later, when asked to recall details about the images, the group that had taken photos actually remembered less than those who had simply observed.
Oh, wow.
They essentially outsourced their memory to their devices, and this reliance had weakened their own internal encoding processes.
That is wild. It's like we're trading our own cognitive abilities for the convenience of technology.
It seems that way.
And what's really scary is that this could have serious implications for how we learn, how we work, and even how we relate to others.
Absolutely. The AI even suggested that this could lead to a decline in professional expertise, with people becoming increasingly reliant on digital resources rather than their own knowledge and experience.
Okay, so we've covered reduced critical thinking and impaired memory. What's the next area of impact we need to dive into?
Well, the next area is something I think a lot of us can relate to, and that's decreased attention span and increased cognitive overload.
Ugh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I can barely make it through a news article without getting distracted by a notification or a shiny object.
Yeah.
But is this just a matter of willpower, or is there something more fundamental happening in our brains?
Well, the AI suggested that it might be more than just a lack of discipline. It pointed to research on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience.
Right.
The argument is that the constant barrage of information and stimulation from our devices might actually be changing the way our brains are wired, making us more prone to distraction and less able to sustain focus.
So basically, our brains are becoming like those dogs in the Pavlov experiment, constantly salivating at the sound of the notification bell.
That's a pretty good analogy. The AI actually mentioned a study where researchers used fMRI to measure brain activity in people while they were performing a task that required sustained attention.
Okay.
What they found was that those who reported using social media more frequently showed less activity in the prefrontal cortex, a brain region crucial for executive function and attention control.
Okay, so you're saying that spending too much time on Instagram could actually be shrinking the part of my brain
Potentially.
that's responsible for, not being a total scatterbrain.
It's possible.
That's terrifying, and it also kind of explains a lot. But how does this attention deficit play out in the real world?
Well, the AI gave some pretty sobering examples.
Oh, no?
It talked about how this decline in attention span
Okay.
could have a major impact on our ability to solve complex problems, to learn new skills, and even to maintain meaningful relationships. Imagine trying to write a novel or learn a new language or have a deep conversation with someone when your brain is constantly being pulled in 1,000 different directions.
It's like trying to build a house of cards in a wind tunnel, isn't it?
Exactly.
Everything just keeps falling apart. But okay, let's switch gears for a moment.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the potential negative impacts, but I think it's important to acknowledge that technology, particularly social media, can also have positive effects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't ignore the ways in which technology has connected us globally, given us access to information, and even facilitated social movements.
Yeah.
Social media in particular can be a powerful tool for building communities, sharing ideas, and advocating for change.
Right, like look at how social media has been used to organize protests, raise awareness about important issues, and even connect people during times of crisis.
Exactly.
It's not all doom and gloom.
It's not all doom and gloom. The key, as with most things in life, is balance.
Right.
It's about using technology mindfully and intentionally, choosing to engage with content that is positive, uplifting, and intellectually stimulating, and being aware of the potential downsides so we can mitigate them.
So how do we find that balance? Is it just a matter of setting limits on our screen time? Or is there something more to it?
The AI actually suggested that it's not just about reducing screen time, but about changing the way we interact with technology. It's about being more selective about what we consume.
More critical of the information we encounter, and more intentional about how we use technology to connect with others and with the world around us.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. It's not about throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Right.
It's about being a more discerning digital citizen.
Exactly.
So let's move on to the next area the AI highlighted.
Okay.
And this one's a bit of a heartbreaker.
Oh.
Reduced empathy and social skills.
Is this just a case of kids these days don't know how to interact, or is there something deeper going on?
Well, it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
The AI explained that human communication is incredibly complex.
Right.
We rely on a whole symphony of nonverbal cues like facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language to understand each other and build meaningful connections. But these cues are often lost or misinterpreted in online interactions,
Right.
which can lead to misunderstandings, conflict, and a decline in empathy.
It's like trying to play a symphony with only one instrument, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're missing out on all the richness and depth of the full orchestra.
Right.
But okay, so besides potential awkwardness in social situations, are there any other real-world consequences of this empathy deficit?
The AI suggested some pretty profound implications.
Okay.
It talked about how this decline in empathy could lead to an increase in online hostility and polarization.
Right.
As people become less able to understand and connect with those who hold different views.
Yeah.
It also raised concerns about the impact on our ability to build and maintain strong relationships, both personal and professional.
So basically, we're becoming a society of emotionally stunted robots who can't even figure out how to have a civil conversation.
Well, it's not quite that bleak,
Okay.
but it is certainly something to be mindful of.
Yeah.
The AI also highlighted the importance of making a conscious effort to cultivate empathy in our digital interactions.
Right.
To be more mindful of our tone and language, and to seek out opportunities for genuine connection and understanding.
So it's not just about limiting screen time, it's about being more mindful of how we're using that time.
Exactly.
And speaking of time, let's move on to the final area the AI identified,
Okay.
which is something I think a lot of us struggle with.
Yeah.
Increased stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't the internet supposed to be a place where we can relax
Right.
and escape from the pressures of everyday life?
You would think so.
Right.
But the AI argued that the reality is often quite different.
Yeah.
It pointed out that the constant stream of information, the pressure to be always on,
Right.
and the social comparison that's so prevalent on social media can actually contribute to increased stress and anxiety.
Ugh, the social comparison thing is the worst.
It is tough.
It's like everyone else is living their best life while I'm just over here trying to survive another Monday.
Right.
But is this just a matter of having a thicker skin, or is there something more insidious at play?
Well, the AI suggested that it might be more than just a matter of personal resilience. It talked about how the design of social media platforms, with their emphasis on likes, shares, and followers, actually taps into our brain's reward system, creating a cycle of craving and seeking validation that can be incredibly addictive and ultimately unsatisfying.
So basically we're like lab rats pressing a lever for a pellet of digital dopamine.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
The AI actually cited research that showed a correlation between heavy social media use
Oh, wow.
and increased levels of cortisol, of stress hormone.
Gosh.
It also pointed out that the constant fear of missing out, FOMO,
Right.
can create a state of chronic anxiety
Yeah.
as we constantly compare ourselves to others and worry that we're not measuring up.
It's like we're living in a perpetual state of keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
Except the Joneses are now a bunch of curated Instagram profiles that are probably not even real.
Exactly.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from this cycle of stress and anxiety?
Yeah.
Is it just a matter of deleting our social media accounts and living off the grid?
Well, that's one option, but it's not the only one. The AI emphasized the importance of setting boundaries,
Okay.
being mindful of our digital habits, and seeking out alternative ways to manage stress and find fulfillment,
Right.
both online and offline.
So it's not about rejecting technology altogether.
Right.
It's about finding a healthier relationship with it.
Exactly.
And speaking of relationships, the AI also made a point of highlighting the potential impact of all this screen time
Yeah.
on our real-world connections.
It talked about how excessive reliance on digital communication can lead to a decline in face-to-face interactions,
Yeah.
which are essential for building strong relationships and developing social skills.
Right.
It also raised concerns about the impact on our ability to be present and attentive in our interactions with others,
Oh, yeah.
as our minds are constantly being pulled towards our devices.
It's like we're becoming a society of digital phantoms, constantly present in the virtual world, but increasingly absent from the real one.
Yeah,
But okay, before we all descend into a spiral of existential despair,
Right.
is there any hope? Does the AI offer any solutions to these problems?
absolutely. While the AI didn't sugarcoat the potential risks, it also offered a lot of practical advice and strategies for mitigating those risks and harnessing the power of technology in a way that enhances our lives rather than detracting from them.
Yeah, I'm all ears. Tell me everything.
So the AI, it really emphasized the importance of being more mindful and intentional about our technology use. It's not about going cold turkey,
Right.
or becoming a Luddite. It's
Yeah.
about setting healthy boundaries and making conscious choices
Right.
about how we interact with these tools.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's about taking control rather than
Yes.
letting technology control us.
Exactly.
But what does that look like in practice? Like, what are some
Yeah.
concrete steps we can take?
So the AI suggested a few things.
Okay.
First, it talked about the importance of creating tech-free zones in our life,
Okay.
both physically and temporally. This could mean having device-free dinners with our families,
Yeah.
designating certain areas of our homes as tech-free, or even scheduling regular digital detox.
Like a
Period.
digital Sabbath.
Yeah, like a digital Sabbath,
Yeah.
where we completely disconnect from our devices for a set amount of time.
I kind of like that idea, actually.
Yeah,
It's like giving our brains a chance to reboot
Right.
and reconnect with the real world.
exactly.
But what about those of us who are, shall we say, digitally addicted? How do we break free from the clutches of our devices?
Yeah, the AI suggests a few strategies for that as well.
Okay.
It talked about the importance of identifying our triggers, the things that make us reach for our phones or open our laptops even when we don't need to.
Yeah.
Once we've identified those triggers,
Uh-huh.
we can start to develop coping mechanisms like finding alternative activities to engage in,
Okay.
setting limits on our app usage,
Right.
or even using apps that help us track and manage our screen time.
So it's about being more aware of our habits and developing strategies to break those habits.
Exactly.
But what about the content itself?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do to mitigate the negative effects of the information overload
Right.
we're constantly bombarded with?
The AI suggested a few things here as well.
Okay.
It talked about the importance of being more selective about what we consume.
Okay.
Choosing to engage with content that is positive,
Right.
uplifting and intellectually stimulating,
Right.
rather than content that is negative, stressful, or overwhelming.
Yeah.
It also highlighted the importance of being critical of the information we encounter,
Right.
fact-checking sources, and being aware of potential biases.
So basically, it's about being a more discerning digital consumer.
Exactly.
Not just passively absorbing whatever's thrown at us,
Yeah.
but actively choosing what we want to engage with.
Exactly.
But what about the social aspect? How do we mitigate the negative effects of social media on our relationships and social skills?
Yeah, so the AI emphasized the importance of prioritizing face-to-face interactions and making a conscious effort to cultivate empathy
Right.
in our digital communications.
Okay.
This could mean setting aside dedicated time for quality time with loved ones,
Yeah.
being more mindful of our tone and language online,
Right.
and making an effort to understand and connect with those who hold different views.
So it's about finding a balance between the digital and the real.
Exactly.
Between connecting online and connecting in person.
Yeah.
And speaking of balance, the AI also talked about the importance of finding alternative ways to manage stress and find fulfillment,
Right.
both online and offline.
It talked about the importance of engaging in activities that bring us joy and help us relax, whether that's spending time in nature, pursuing hobbies, listening to music,
Right.
or connecting with friends and family. It also highlighted the importance of taking care of our physical and mental health through exercise, sleep, and mindfulness practices.
So it's about taking a holistic approach, not just focusing on our digital habits,
Exactly.
but also taking care of our overall well-being. And speaking of holistic approaches,
Right.
the AI brought up something I found really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
It's the idea that the way we consume information through 2D displays
Right.
might actually be changing the way our brains process information and perceive the world.
That's right. You know, for most of human history, we interacted with the world in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
We experienced depth, texture, and movement in a way that simply can't be replicated
Yeah.
on a flat screen.
It's like the difference between looking at a photograph of a forest
Right.
and actually walking through a forest. Isn't it?
Exactly. You're missing out on all the sensory details, the
Yeah.
smells, the sounds, the feeling of the ground beneath your feet.
And the AI suggested that this constant exposure to 2D representations of reality
Right.
might be altering our spatial reasoning abilities,
Uh-huh.
our perception of depth.
And even our ability to navigate the physical world.
So you're saying that all those hours I spent playing video games as a kid might actually have made me worse at parallel parking?
It's possible.
I knew it.
Uh,
I'm almost right. But seriously, are there any studies that support this idea?
Actually, there are. The AI cited a study where researchers found that children who spent more time playing video games had a harder time estimating distances in the real world.
Interesting.
They also found that children who spent more time outdoors engaging in activities that required them to use their spatial reasoning skills
Okay.
performed better on these tasks.
So we need to get off the couch and go outside more.
Seems like it, yeah.
I guess my mom was right about that too. But what about the attention span thing? We've already talked about how the constant stimulation of the digital world can lead to fragmented attention.
Right.
But is there something unique about the way information is presented on a 2D screen that might be exacerbating this?
The AI suggested that there might be.
Yeah.
It pointed out that the way information is presented on a 2D screen,
Yeah.
often in short bursts with bright colors, flashing images, and constant movement, might be training our brains to crave novelty and stimulation, making it harder to focus on anything that doesn't provide that instant gratification.
So it's not just that we're choosing to be distracted, it's that our brains are being wired to seek out distraction.
Potentially. Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
It is a little bit, yeah.
So we're trading depth for speed,
Right?
nuance for novelty.
Yeah, it seems that way.
And what about social media? Is there something unique about the way it uses 2D displays that might be exacerbating the negative effects on our mental health and social skills?
The AI suggested that there might be.
Okay.
It pointed out that social media platforms are particularly adept at exploiting our brain's reward system. They use algorithms to curate content that's designed to keep us engaged,
Right.
often by triggering our emotions, whether it's through outrage, amusement, or envy.
Yeah.
And because social media is so visual,
Right.
it relies heavily on images and videos, which can be even more stimulating and addictive
Yeah.
than text-based content.
It's like we're being bombarded with these highly stimulating visuals,
Right.
and our brains are getting hooked on the dopamine rush that comes with each like, comment, or share.
Exactly. And the AI suggested that this constant pursuit of digital rewards
Right.
might be coming at the expense of real-world experiences and relationships.
So we're trading in the richness and complexity of human connection for the instant gratification of online interactions, which are often superficial and fleeting.
And this can have a profound impact on our sense of well-being,
Yeah.
our relationships, and even our sense of self.
So what does this all mean? What can we do about it?
Well, I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
We need to understand how these technologies are affecting us both individually and as a society.
Right.
And we need to be willing to have honest conversations about the potential risks and benefits. It's not about demonizing technology
Right.
or rejecting it altogether.
Right. It's about using it wisely and intentionally.
Exactly. It's about setting boundaries, creating healthy habits,
Okay.
and being mindful of how our digital interactions are shaping our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
It's about prioritizing real-world experiences,
Yeah.
nurturing our relationships, and finding ways to disconnect from the digital world.
Yeah.
And reconnect with ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly.
And it's about recognizing that technology is a tool.
Right.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
Exactly.
It's up to us to decide how we want to use it.
I agree.
So that's our deep dive for today. I know it's been a lot to process.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a really important conversation.
I agree. I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
The future of our relationship with technology is not predetermined. We have the power to shape it, to make choices that will benefit us and future generations.
So let's choose wisely.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.